Let me paint a picture of a couple. We'll call them Alex and Sarah. They're in their early 30s. They both worked incredibly hard in their 20s, climbed the corporate ladder, switched companies a few times, and this year they finally hit the holy grail of modern career success. Combined, they are officially making $300,000 a year. If you told 22-year-old Alex and Sarah that they would be making 300 grand by the time they were 35, they would have assumed they'd be driving Ferraris, flying first class to Europe twice a year, and swimming in a vault of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. But here is the reality of their life today. They wake up exhausted in a house that feels constantly cluttered. They drive to jobs that demand 60 hours a week of their time. And at the end of the month, when all the bills are paid, the mortgage is covered, the car payments are made, and the credit cards are zeroed out, they look at their checking account and see a leftover balance of about $400. They are in the top 5% of household incomes in the country, yet they are one missed paycheck or one major medical emergency away from a complete financial meltdown. They are what the financial industry calls Henrys, high earners not rich yet. And they are quietly panicking, wondering where all the money is going and why earning $300,000 a year feels exactly like being broke.
My name is Nico, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. And if you want to stop feeling stressed about your finances and start actually building wealth, hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, and let me ask you this. If your income doubled tomorrow, do you honestly believe your financial stress would disappear, or would you just find more expensive things to stress about? Think about it like being on a treadmill. When you were making $60,000 a year, you were jogging. It takes effort, you're sweating, but you are managing. When you get a raise to $100,000, you don't step off the treadmill, you just bump the speed up. You upgrade the apartment, you buy a slightly nicer car. By the time you hit $300,000 a year, you aren't just jogging anymore. You are sprinting at an absolute maximum incline. The belt is moving blindingly fast. Yes, you are covering a lot of distance, and yes, to everyone watching you, it looks incredibly impressive. But if you stumble even for a second, you are going to get thrown off the back and slam into the wall. This is the fundamental illusion of a high household income. We are culturally conditioned to believe that a high salary is the finish line. We think that once we hit that magic number, the game is won. But here's where it gets really interesting. A high income doesn't automatically create wealth. In fact, for most people, a high income acts as an accelerant for bad financial habits. It masks your financial flaws. When you make 60 grand a year, if you overspend on a weekend trip, you feel it immediately. Your card gets declined at the grocery store, or you have to eat ramen for 2 weeks. The feedback loop is instant and painful. But when you make 300 grand a year, your income acts like a shock absorber for your bad decisions. You can afford the massive mortgage. You can afford the 2 luxury car leases. You can afford the organic groceries and the expensive dinners out. You never technically run out of money, so you never feel the pain, but you are completely paralyzed. You are trapped in a golden cage of your own design.
Let's walk through the actual math of how $300,000 vanishes into thin air, because people hear that number and think it's impossible to be broke. Let's break it down, step by step. First of all, $300,000 is not $300,000. We have to talk about the silent partner in your marriage, which is the government. If you are making this kind of money, depending on the state you live in, your tax burden is going to be massive. You are easily losing 30 to 35% right off the top to federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, and Medicare. So immediately, your $300,000 drops to roughly $195,000. Suddenly, we aren't talking about 25 grand a month in cash. We are talking about maybe $16,000 a month in actual take-home pay. Now, let's look at the lifestyle that typically accompanies this income. When you start making real money, society expects you to look like you make real money. So, Alex and Sarah do what everyone else does. They buy the nice house in the nice neighborhood with the good school district.
A house in that kind of neighborhood today, it's probably going to cost around $1.2 million. With current interest rates sitting around 6 or 7%, plus property taxes, which are brutally high in good school districts, and home insurance, their monthly housing payment is easily around $8,000. Half of their take-home pay is instantly wiped out by the roof over their heads. They now have $8,000 left for the month. But it doesn't stop there. Because you live in a $1.2 million house, you can't park a 10-year-old beaten-up Honda Civic in the driveway. Your neighbors drive Teslas, BMWs, and Range Rovers. You are a vice president now. You have an image to uphold. So they lease 2 luxury SUVs. Between the lease payments, the premium insurance required for high-end cars, the premium gas, and the annual registrations, they're dropping about $2,000 a month just on transportation. We are now down to $6,000 a month.
And here is the part that will blow your mind. If they have 2 young kids, childcare is going to absolutely decimate what's left. Daycare for 2 children in a high cost of living area or a nanny will easily run them $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Let's be conservative and call it $3,000. They now have $3,000 left. Out of that remaining $3,000, they have to buy groceries for a family of 4, which with inflation right now is easily $1,000. They have utility bills, cell phone plans, high-speed internet, maybe a couple of streaming services, which is another $500. We are down to $1,500. They probably still have some lingering student loans from the degrees that got them these high-paying jobs in the first place. That's another $500. We are down to $1,000. And we haven't even talked about clothes, healthcare out-of-pocket costs, home maintenance, car repairs, saving for the kids' college, or heaven forbid, actually going on a vacation. Do you see how fast the math completely falls apart? A top 5% income is entirely consumed by a completely standard, slightly upper-middle-class American lifestyle. There are no private jets here, there is no caviar, there are just mortgages, car payments, and daycare. But here's the crazy part. The math is only half the story. The real trap of a high income is the psychology behind it. When you earn a lot of money, you develop something I call the exhaustion tax. When you are working 60 hours a week in a high-pressure environment, answering emails at 11 o'clock at night, dealing with corporate politics, and constantly feeling like you are on the verge of burnout, you start to justify extreme convenience spending as a basic survival need. You don't want to cook on a Tuesday night because you were totally drained, so you order $50 worth of DoorDash. You do that 3 times a week. You don't have the energy to clean your massive house on the weekend because the weekend is your only time to recover, so you hire a house cleaning service for $400 a month. You are so burnt out by the time summer rolls around that you convince yourself you need an overly expensive, hyper-luxurious vacation just to reset your mental health, so you drop $8,000 on a week in Cabo. You rationalize all of this by saying, I work hard, I make good money, I deserve this. And not single phrase, I deserve this, is the most dangerous sentence in personal finance. It is the justification for almost every terrible financial decision high earners make. You are essentially spending all of your money to recover from the job that you only keep to pay for the things you are buying. It is a completely circular trap. This is the fundamental difference between earning money and keeping money. Income is not wealth. Wealth is what you accumulate when you don't spend all your income. Think about it. Earning $300,000 a year and spending $295,000 a year makes you exactly as wealthy as someone earning $60,000 a year and spending $55,000 a year. You both only have $5,000 left over. The only difference is that your overhead is terrifyingly high. If the person making $60,000 loses their job, they can go work at a coffee shop or take a temporary pay cut to survive. Their expenses are low, they are nimble. If you lose your $300,000 job, your $8,000 mortgage doesn't care. Your luxury car lease doesn't care. The private preschool doesn't care. You have built a life with a massive, unyielding burn rate. You have absolutely zero margin of safety. So how do you actually escape this? How do you transition from being a high-income earner who is secretly stressed out to someone who is actually building lasting generational wealth? It requires a complete identity shift. You have to stop viewing your income as a license to consume and start viewing it as a massive, powerful engine to buy back your freedom. The first psychological shift you have to make is breaking the connection between your salary and your lifestyle. Most people practice something called lifestyle inflation. As their income rises, their lifestyle rises in exact tandem. You get a $10,000 raise, you immediately figure out a way to add $10,000 of expense to your life. The secret to wealth at a high income is artificially capping your lifestyle. Imagine if Alex and Sarah had capped their lifestyle at $150,000. What if they decided that no matter how much they made above that number, their living expenses would never cross that line? If they lived on $150,000 and brought home $195,000 after taxes, they would have $45,000 a year in absolute pure cash flow. That is almost $4,000 a month of weaponized capital. That is money that can be aggressively thrown into index funds, real estate, or business ventures. But more importantly, that money buys you the ultimate luxury in life, which is walking away money. Walking away money changes everything about how you walk through the world. When you have zero savings and massive overhead, you have to tolerate a toxic boss. You have to tolerate a terrible company culture. You are a hostage to your paycheck. But when your lifestyle is completely detached from your total income and you have a massive financial cushion, you walk into the office differently. You negotiate differently. You say no to ridiculous demands because you know deep down that you don't actually need them. You have the ultimate leverage. To get there, you have to actively fight against societal expectations of what success looks like. You have to embrace stealth wealth. You have to be okay with driving a Toyota Camry into the executive parking lot. You have to be okay with living in a completely normal, unassuming house in a perfectly average neighborhood, even though the bank told you that you were approved for a mortgage twice as large. You have to realize that the bank is not your financial advisor. The bank is trying to sell you the most expensive product you can technically survive buying. Just because you were approved for $1 million loan does not mean you should take it. You have to start making decisions based on the opportunity cost of the money. Let's look at the opportunity cost of just the cars. If you were spending $2,000 a month on 2 luxury car payments and you do that for 10 years, you have spent $240,000 just to drive around in a depreciating metal box. But if you bought 2 reliable, slightly used cars for cash and instead took that $2,000 a month and invested it into an S&P 500 index fund returning an average of 8% a year, after 10 years, you wouldn't just have $240,000. Through the magic of compound interest, you would have close to $370,000. After 20 years, it would be over $1 million. Think about that. The decision to lease luxury cars isn't costing you $2,000 a month. It is costing you $1 million of your future wealth. When you start running the math like that, the BMW stops looking like a status symbol and starts looking like an anchor chained to your ankle. This is where the difference between small decisions and big decisions becomes critical. The personal finance industry loves to shame people for buying $4 lattes. They tell you that if you stop buying avocado toast, you'll be rich. But here is the reality. If you are making $300,000 a year, the latte is not the problem. You can buy a coffee every single day for the rest of your life and it won't make a dent in an income not size. What keeps high earners broke are the big structural permanent decisions. It's the housing costs, the transportation costs, and the education costs. If you get those 3 things wrong, no amount of coupon clipping or skipping morning coffee is going to save you. If you get those 3 things right, if you buy a house well beneath your means, if you drive reliable cars for a decade, and if you utilize public schools instead of incredibly expensive private schools, you can basically do whatever you want with the rest of your money. You can eat out, you can travel, you can buy the lattes, because your structural overhead is so incredibly light.
You have to learn to recognize the subtle, hidden traps of your own success. As you climb the ladder, the people around you will normalize insane levels of spending. You will go to dinner with colleagues who casually drop $500 on wine. You will hear them talking about the $40,000 kitchen renovations they are doing or the exotic vacations they are taking. It is human nature to want to fit in with your peer group. It is incredibly difficult to sit at that table and say, actually, I'm going to pass on the wine and we are just doing a local road trip for vacation this year. It feels like admitting defeat. It feels like you aren't as successful as they are. But you have to remember that you are looking at their spending, not their balance sheet. Most of the people trying to look rich are actually drowning in debt to pull off the illusion. True wealth is silent. True wealth is the money you don't see. It's the fully funded retirement accounts, the brokerage portfolios, the lack of financial anxiety when you put your head on the pillow at night. The most powerful thing you can do right now, no matter what your income is to draw a hard line in the sand. Decide exactly what your enough number is for your lifestyle. Write it down. Maybe it's 80,000, maybe it's 120,000. Whatever it is, commit to the fact that any dollar you earn above that line doesn't exist for consumption. It exists solely to buy your freedom. It goes straight to investments. It goes straight to debt payoff. It never even touches your checking account where you can be tempted by it. You have to automate the wealth building process so that your own psychology doesn't have a chance to sabotage you.
When you do this, you undergo a massive identity shift. You stop being a consumer and you become an owner. You become the kind of person who controls their money instead of letting their money control them. You step off the treadmill. You look around and you realize that the race everyone else is running is completely artificial. You don't have to participate. You can take your high income, convert it into lasting assets, and completely change the trajectory of your family's future for generations to come. It's not about deprivation, it's about prioritization. It's about deciding that your future freedom is far more valuable than a momentary hit of status today. So take a brutal, honest look at your current overhead. Look at the big three: housing, cars, and food. Where have you let the golden handcuffs snap shut? Where are you paying an exhaustion tax because you're too burnt out to manage your life? Identify the leaks, shrink your overhead, and start using that incredible income to actually buy the one thing that matters, which is your time. Because if you don't, you will wake up 10 years from now having made millions of dollars on paper with absolutely nothing to show for it but a house full of stuff and a stomach full of anxiety. It is your money, it is your life, and it is entirely your choice. Start acting like the wealth builder you were meant to be. Leave a comment below with the biggest financial trap you noticed high earners falling into. Hit that like button, and I will see you in the next one.